Here's one of the toughest questions you can ask any successful game developer. How would you follow up your greatest performance, beloved by more than 1 million people all around the world? IREM had their work cut out for them when they made Image Fight in 1988. A glimpse into the future of warfare, simulated by virtual reality. Originally, this game had nothing to do with R-Type, but seeing how similarly it plays to R-Type, it was incorporated into R-Type lore as a prequel. Which fits, considering most of the enemies you'll be facing are weird bioorganic monsters that look like they belong in the Bido Empire. The best shoot-em-ups around this time perfected what the genre is usually known for, like stage design and quick, explosive gratification. But shmups were not known for impressionable storytelling. This realization was all IREM needed to uphold their newfound reputation of being innovators, producing one of the earliest attempts at tying narrative into the gameplay, rather than it merely being a setting for the game to take place in. To reclaim a crucial moon base infested by an alien parasite, the Earth's military develops a state-of-the-art training simulator, one-to-one with reality, hoping to train an elite force of pilots that can outgun armadas. You volunteer for soul-crushingly tough training in the hopes of passing your military exam and becoming an ace astronaut, going through 5 simulated environments before blasting off into real combat. It's a generic plot on its own, but for the first time in shooting game history, the storyline is woven into every aspect of the game's design. When you beat a level in any other game, you'd probably get a neat little victory jingle or a moment of rest before being thrown into the next bizarre-looking environment. No real thought or reason as to why the underground tunnel's right next to the burning fire field. But here, you return to reality to have your performance graded, while the simulation's being calibrated for your next test. It's the smoothest, most believable transition video games could offer while building anticipation for what happens after you're done with all 5 training stages. The big payoff comes once you graduate and become a fighter pilot, launching into a massive battle that takes you from Earth all the way to the moon in an epic campaign spanning 3 levels, which are more like checkpoints than traditional video game levels. It does not disappoint. By the time I finished the game, with the drums of victory blaring through the speakers, I felt darn satisfied as the game came full circle. Our damaged ship drifting back to Earth somberly. You probably have Image Fight to thank for future video game stories that show, but don't tell, like Sonic 3 and Knuckles. If it didn't inspire all the stepping stones leading up to modern game storytelling, it was at least bold enough to be one of the earliest to attempt something bolder than the status quo. Now, since it's second to the presentation, we'll take a brief look at the gameplay. Image Fight is a tactical shoot-em-up in which you memorize, then plan for barrages of enemy patterns by picking the right weapons from several choices offered to you throughout the stage. It's identical to R-Type, so if you want a more detailed rundown of IREM shmups, I recommend you check out my R-Type review. It would be better to cover what distinguishes Image Fight from R-Type. The iconic force pods make a return as your main source of power, but they do not destroy bullets. Instead, they come in 2 flavors, red and blue, which lets you freely aim them in all directions or fire straight forward, respectively. You can collect 3 of these and mix colors suited for your personal strategy, or launch them forward as missiles. Since the pods aren't the central gimmick of the game anymore, more focus was put on the individual weapons you'll find throughout the stages. There are 9 guns you can attach to your hull, one of them only used in the last stage. Remarkably, they're all good and feel fun to use. While the green rings are a little overpowered, almost all the choices are viable dependent on what the player prefers. giving you a little variety to mix up what is otherwise a heavily railroaded game. Your basic, unupgraded ship also got a few upgrades to compensate for the lack of pod protection. The backfire from your engine can toast whatever's going for your bum, and with it, adjustable speed. Yes, those Galaxy Brain engineers finally thought it wise to install some brakes next to the throttle. No more locked into hyperdrive. Those improvements and changes established, I'd love to say Image Fight is R-Type powered up by a cinematic narrative. But there's one enormous hurdle to jump before anyone can appreciate its innovation. The difficulty! It feels like someone at IREM feared their game would be too easy for experts, so they jacked the enemy health up at the last second. Enemies have a bit too much health for a game that demands you pound on the fire button constantly. It's especially noticeable when you're underpowered. I don't think you want your game to give people carpal tunnel syndrome. The bullet spongy enemies don't make the challenge as natural as it could have been. It's reasonable enough figuring out how to recover from a death, but actually recovering is a son of a bitch if you don't have auto fire. Speaking of unnatural, the spots you gotta buckle down and memorize are not subtle in expressing how much they want you dead. The toughest level in R-Type made you learn how to dodge barely dodgeable blocks of death. But here, it's like it's not even trying to hide the fact it wants your money. It's as subtle as a thick wall in your face. Hope you pick the path without power-ups you might need. Despite the imbalanced difficulty, Image Fight remains another blast of shoot-'em-up bliss made by the developers that rewrote the genre. A pioneer of action game world building whose influence shouldn't be underestimated. Image Fight gets an A-, or should I say, an auto-fire minus. An average player likely wouldn't find it as playable without it. Thank you very much for watching the video through to the end. If you liked it, make sure you shoot the like and subscribe buttons, and there will be more game archaeology at least once a month.